All right, so yeah, sorry to yeah, I already told you about the 20 minutes, so I'll just get started. So I'll probably get into my system, but I'll just mention the trigger today because I did want to work with it, but maybe my system's going to have other ideas. Um, there have been some people at work that talk, and it's really distracting. And then last week, I sent them an email. No, Monday. What day was that? Yesterday? Seems such a long time ago. I sent an email past them to be quiet, and I've sent a message before, and then they're downstairs, but all the sound travels up. Anyway, so then I had that again, they were talking, I had to ask them again today, and I got so triggered after asking them. So that's what I'll do with that. But let me do some breathing and just get into so I'm gonna ask my system stabilizer if I can do some work. And yeah, he's like, sure. And I'm checking if he's got insights. Says there's a few areas that are sort of salient, sticking out, like work or like the broader scheme of my life. There's this event today that triggered me. And then there's sort of this relationship or partner like longing, which has been like really the story of my life, um, or at least from the very early ages. So I'm going to check in with my body. And so the first thing is a little bit of a headache, and which is my first sense is like my worrying part. I'm going to say hi to my worrier. He appreciates that. And there's this juggling part, like I'm planning a trip to Europe. And then there's things I'll be missing. And then I also have I don't give a shit part. Who feels like I get a little too caught up with the details. All right, so there's this polarization here between this doesn't give a shit part and like my worrier. Let me just see if I can get that to and there's some anxiety between them. Let me see if I can get them to sit at the table in my kitchen. Yeah, there's some pretty strong energy there. So the worrier feels completely dismissed by the don't give a shit part. So I'm going to ask the don't give a shit part if I can just talk with the worrier a bit. Yeah, so he's like, okay. But on the second thought, maybe I should start with the anxious part. So the anxious part is like they both have good points. And the anxious part just wishes they would come to some sort of agreement or compromise or some sort of settlement. So, because when things are settled and sort of there's an understanding, then it's less anxiety for this anxious part who just really, yeah. So this is an exile that really did not like conflict in my home as a child. So I'm going to ask this anxious part, like, what is it afraid would happen if it wasn't doing, if it wasn't getting anxious about conflict? So I just had a wave of numbness run through my knees and calves and feet. Yeah. Um, like my knees got weak kind of thing. So this part just really associates conflict with something. Well, first of all, there's just a lack of peace. And then some sort of yelling might occur, and then some sort of violence. Somebody's going to get hit, or just this heavy unpleasantness type of environment. Now my gut's getting stirred up. So this also relates to I'm finding a connection with what happened at work today, because when I got triggered from having to complain to people repeatedly that they're talking too much. They're just socializing and I'm trying to get work done. And so there's a part of me that feels like an asshole, or like I'm inconsiderate, or I'm not flexible enough. And there's a part of me that's really, it's a little bit weaker, but it's kind of standing there with a stick, like that old movie of Moses. And it's sort of, it's kind of pitching the stick into the ground saying, hey, I have rights. Like, I'm at work. I'm trying to work. I'm trying to concentrate. I should be provided a quiet environment. But this part feels it has moral high ground, but it doesn't feel very confident. First of all, it doesn't like conflict. It doesn't like not being liked. So it has this idea that if it asserts itself, then other people may not like it. All right. So I got a few things going on here, and I'm going to try to. So my headache has kind of declined. There is sort of something clamping on the back of my neck and sort of running down to my left clavicle. And that's even the language, it's clamping. It's kind of like it's like a grabbing, it's clutching onto something, like white knuckling something. So this is a reflection of a part that's scared. So I'm just going to see if it's all right if the scared part gives me a little space to talk, or if it wants to pull up a seat and observe, or if it really has to say something. So it's just saying that it's a reaction, that it's someone else, something else is triggering it. So it's fine to let me go forward. It just wanted to say that. So there's this ache in my gut, kind of where my diaphragm is, pulling down to my spine. And a kind of a headache came back again. So the headache is a part that's getting a little frustrated with therapy. Like, how many times am I going to visit the ache in my gut? And maybe I need to just accept it. Maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it's a good thing that I get scared or triggered. Maybe it's a defense mechanism against a real sort of. So I'm just going to ask this part that seems to be sense making and sort of maybe protecting, if it's just okay if I spend time with the hurt, which is really what the ache feels like, both historically and presently. He's like okay, but he's still a little suspect. So I'm just going to tell him if he doesn't like where this is going, he can come back and interrupt. I'm getting the sense he still wants to say more, so I'm just going to say, go ahead. What else do you want to say? All right. So he's saying he didn't really want to say more. He just wanted to know that I was willing to hear more if he had more to say. So he just didn't want to feel like he was being dismissed. So yeah, he appreciates that. And yeah, he says he's happy to be patient and in some ways pause his agenda. So I'm thinking of my other exile that's I've been visiting. He's sitting in a gray cubicle and he's been feeling better since I've been visiting him, and we've concluded that me asking him if he wants to leave, is get out of there, is not helpful. And now he's saying he didn't really mean it that way. He's just didn't like feeling pushed. He says he's enjoyed getting to know me, even though sometimes I have an agenda. He feels I'm sincere and that when I have an agenda, it's just like I can't help myself. So I'm going to go back to being triggered this afternoon. One of the things that occurred to me was, I know I have this explaining part, but it just wants to explain a little. I was raised to put up with other people. And that's one of the things that occurred to me today when I was thinking about why I got so triggered. I couldn't even sit at my desk. I had to leave and go for a walk after asking these people to be quiet. And there's a part of me that feels weird and ashamed, and there's a critical part like, why should I be the one getting triggered when I'm the one who has some sort of moral high ground with saying I need a quiet workplace? And so it's this idea that I'm asserting my view or my desires and needs. Yeah, that's kind of, yeah, so that's weird from my gut's really getting triggered on that. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. It's really pulling into my diaphragm now. Yeah, so I just said something that really hit home, like expressing needs. I even have problems with nonviolent communications because it requires, you talk about needs, I need this and I need that. And I was, these just sound to me like souped up desires, like I want, I really want, it becomes a need. But I do actually need people to be quiet so I could work there. Otherwise, I'll just go home and work, and I don't want to do that. So when I ask this part, what might happen if it expresses a need, it says it might get hit. So I had two older siblings that used to sort of get really expressive and say they wanted this and wanted that, and it just caused a lot of chaos. So that was where I sort of just tried to fit in. So I'm just going to try to sit with this sort of hurt and fear. I'm going to see if I can move it around my body, like to my shoulders. My shoulders feel maybe to my ears or anything. All right, so I get this like tingling in my whole body. I'm going to ask this part if there's anything it wants me to know or if it just wants me to feel for now. So it says it likes the question, it likes both, but it's saying that it's hoping that I can learn that it actually does have needs and it doesn't feel like it has a voice. It feels like it has a voice, but it feels like I've silenced it. I've kind of dissociated and buried it because of all these fears. It seems to have actually some compassion for me, but it's saying this compassion is running a little dry. So I want to thank it for sharing all this because it makes sense. And so this part's like, oh God, like, oh, finally you're maybe getting it. So how do I feel toward this part? Yeah, I'm really curious and compassionate and yeah, curious and compassionate. So I'm letting it know that this part's having a hard time believing that. It's saying it wants to believe it, but it's saying because of its history, it just hasn't shown me being curious and compassionate before. Like I'm allergic to the word needs or something. So I have an image now. It's like 5-year-old me in my bedroom as a child and sitting on the edge of the bed and sort of looking down at the ground and being quite pensive, lonely, quiet, kind of sulking, confused. Yeah, this between like having needs and seeing it being useless to express them. So why bother? So yeah, some frustration. I got a little bit of a headache coming back again. Yeah, there was something about the word confusion and something in my head. Something in my head is just, it wants to sort of analytically make sense of the needs. It wants to get analytical about needs, the word, and the difference between desires. It wants to make sense of it. So I'm going to ask this card if it could give us, I mean, if it's, does it really want to do this? Well, I was going to tell this part of that makes sense, what you're saying. But is it okay to give us a little space rather than sense making at this point to just sort of be with this little guy? So he's saying was only trying to help. Um, yeah, thank you for that. Is there anything else you want to sort of contribute? Says he's just uncomfortable with this whole process. Yeah, so that makes sense. Um, can the part of you that's uncomfortable, could it give us a little bit of space, or do you want to say more about this? It says it's just really scared about coming up with this new sort of, I don't know, like life category or a life need category, like having needs is just gonna be like some sort of foundational shift in my system. Yeah, my knees just got weak with that. So my explaining part just wants to say that I've survived much of my childhood by being needless. And so to go back and to start having needs makes sense, though it seems like a major setback or like a major foundational shift. So some part is saying, well, if it needs to happen, it needs to happen. This, I think it's my real world part, just saying, you gotta like start with truth and a firm foundation. Uh, how much time I got left? I feel like my time must be over.
Hi, Sean. It's just 20 minutes.
All right. I have my own internal clock part, my clock part. All right, let me see if I can navigate some closure here. All right, this little guy on my bed is saying closure. Like, what the hell are you talking about? So let me see if I can come in the bedroom there with him. Yeah, so he's cool with that. Doesn't really know who I am. I'm gonna sit. Can I sit on the wall on the side? And he's like, sure. So I'm telling him I'm his future self. He's completely fascinated by that. And he's asking me, how did I navigate the whole needs thing? And I'm just saying I'm still trying to make sense of it, actually. So that makes him feel less isolated, actually. So he's saying maybe we can work on this stuff together. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm asking him if he feels safe here where he is. He says, sort of. It's a little lonely, he says, until I came in. Um, is there something you need from me right now? And he says I use the word need. He doesn't know why I'm laughing. Yeah, so he's saying he'd like for me to stay. So I'm like, I kind of gotta go, but I can come back and visit. So he's like, cool. And I'm just saying, would you like to go to the beach? He's like, how's that gonna happen? He's like, no, he's just wants to stay there for now. He's been enjoying, in some ways, the isolation of being safe and thinking. Somehow thinking becomes a solace, becomes a friend. So he's just saying, nice to meet me, and he looks forward to chatting again. And I say, me too. All right, I'm going to do some thank yous. Yeah, so he's saying thank you. Yeah, so I'm just saying thank you to him, and he says thank you. He doesn't wasn't sure who I was talking to. All right, I've left the room. I'm leaving the house, coming back. All right, I'm gonna do some thank yous, and I'm gonna take a break, and I'll see you in a minute.